Day 201 of the Ukrainian war map, also known as Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Juzzy here, and today is another quick update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine today. And as always, I like to start off with some of the Russian military hardware and personnel losses. So as of the 12th of the 9th. So starting off, we have 52,950 military personnel losses in the last 24-hour reporting period. That's considered to be an additional 300 or so, above average for sure. And next up, we'll look at the hardware losses on the Russian side as well. So armored combat vehicles, an additional whopping 23, tanks, a massive 14, artillery 6, and we've got one aircraft as well, which may be a little bit of a funny story. I'll mention about that one soon as well. Now, we'll start off with moving back to the map, and we'll take a bit of a look here, where everybody loves a David and Goliath story. Since the beginning of September, over 1,200 square miles are returned and under Ukrainian control. And in fact, Russian soldiers have literally been running for their lives as their chain of command collapses, particularly in the north. And I'll show you exactly how and why shortly. Now, most reports say that Ukraine has liberated the Kharkiv Oblast and pushed Russians back to the border of Donetsk and the Luhansk Oblasts over here. So this isn't the most recent map. It will never be as recent as it can be, but I'm going to show you some photos shortly of the Ukrainian forces actually pushing through into the Luhansk Oblast. So I'll show you that in just a hot second. But I want to start off with a few pictures and videos. So there was a power outage in Kharkiv overnight from basically the Russians were fleeing. A missile struck, I suppose, when they were leaving a power station there. Power has since been restored. But guess who else had a power outage last night? On the map that we can see right here. That's right, the Russian city of Belgorod. Just 25 miles above or north of the Kharkiv border. Now, very little information on this. I've got some video footage, as you can see there. But Belgorod is now in many ways considered to be the Russian HQ or base for the Russian invasion in the north. They had to all pull back, all the Russians forces that is, to Belgorod, the Oblast and the city. But we've got some exciting news here. So the Ukrainian military, of course, made it all the way to Borshova. And we've got a photo here of basically a flag liberated photo. And Borshova is right in this location here, as you can see. And this next one is a big deal. So liberation of Vovchansk, all the way up here. Decent sized city. Now this is a big deal because this was the Russian puppet political administration location just 2 days ago, maybe even less. But then those political puppets had to flee back over the border to Belgorod in the Russian Federation. So this is quite symbolic, quite a good strategic victory as well, to show that the Ukrainian military have actually come all the way up here and pushed the Russians back over their own fence. Also, on that note, reports have confirmed that Russian troops have completely abandoned their own checkpoints at the border. So, say for instance, right here in Kudivka. Basically, Russia's positions in the north were not fortified. So they had everybody, or a lot of Russian troops on the front line, a small number of them. I'll get into the reasons why shortly. But as soon as the Ukrainians pushed above that front line, they started to go into the rear, as they sometimes say, and there wasn't any troops to support a second offensive in the rear, so the Russian troops had to push all the way back to Russia, effectively. Now I've got a nice video here of a Ukrainian soldier in the central square of the liberated city of Izium. Izium's a bit further down, certainly a strategic city, a transportational hub of sorts. We've got the highways intersecting and the rail lines, very important for any Russian offensive. They no longer have access to this one. And this video just shows a Ukrainian soldier getting a warm welcome from a few citizens from behind. Okay, and then we've got some footage and some video and photography of abandoned Russian vehicles as troops scattered in panic to leave. Basically, we have armored fighting vehicles here abandoned by Russian soldiers who changed into civilian clothing, but then later were snuffed out quite easily. Now, it's been an interesting approach that a whole bunch of abandoning Russian soldiers have taken to trying to evade by switching back into civilian clothing. Quite commonly reported in recent times. Next up, we have some footage of a BMP-1 captured, a Russian one, by the Ukrainian forces. Now, this is kind of like an infantry fighting vehicle. However, this one in particular is quite an old Soviet era one. I believe this one was produced in the mid-60s. It could be a 60s or 70s design. Additionally, the Ukrainian forces captured Russian T-72B3s on the E40 highway, just outside of the Slabunivka in the Kharkiv Oblast. Seems like a whole bunch of them here as well. And the T-72B3s, they're sort of a modernized version of the older tank. So equipped to the wazoo, you could say. And this is another video example of an extra T-73 tank donated to the Ukrainians by Russia. Also, we've got a photo here of, now again in the Kharkiv Oblast, Ukrainian forces captured an SA-8 OSA SAM system and a large cache of missiles with it to boot as well. So a SAM system is a surface-to-air missile system. So these things are not cheap. And then we've got another photo of more loot found in Izium. So 7 MT-LB armored vehicles, 2 T-72B series tanks, which is nice to see as well, and a destroyed BRT-82A. Now, the sheer quantity of loot received and donated to the Ukrainian army from the Russian side is there's just too many things to show. But here is what is considered to be a well-regarded vehicular unit, a Tiger M IMV captured in Izium too. Basically, it's a 4x4 multi-purpose all-terrain infantry mobility vehicle. Now, there's been quite the score in Kharkiv. Now, interestingly, in my older videos, I've been half joking about the Ukrainian forces pretending to have a counteroffensive in Kherson, but actually having a major counteroffensive in Kharkiv, or the Kharkiv Oblast instead. And now there is early reports of a sustained disinformation campaign to do just such a thing. And that thing is get Russia to erroneously station 25,000 additional troops at the north bank of the Dnipro River. So down here, cut off the bridges and supply lines with HIMARS, effectively have them cornered with being very low on supplies. But more on that shortly when I jump to it down officially on the map in a second. Now, just on that topic of half joking, I've also part joked about the Ukrainian forces being the single largest holder of Soviet-grade military equipment, especially at this rate. Now, remember, mathematically speaking, when Ukraine captures one working tank from Russia, Russia is then down one working tank as well. So that is actually a deficit differential of 2 tanks on the checklist when comparing the two countries together. So it's not just one difference, but it really is 2. Now we'll move down across, or in this case up across, to the Donbass, where Ukraine surely now has their sights set here. In fact, not just surely, I'll give you some proof. So we have the village of Kuzmivka, right around here. I need to zoom in to find it. It's right above Svarto, where we have now, this is just a photo of a flag being placed here. So Ukrainian flag's been raised over Kuzmivka, which is actually hiding, I believe, because I haven't zoomed in. There it is, right here. Okay. Now, Russia well and truly had this position since the beginning of the war. And we even have super fresh reports from the general staff, the Ukrainian general staff, advising Russian troops retreated from Svartov as well, here in the Luhansk Oblast. So don't pay attention to this red line. This line here is actually the provincial, the state, or the oblast line here. So this red line, I wouldn't worry about it. It's actually just different divisions of Russian troops. But what this means, this is pretty meaningful stuff. What it would mean is that we have not only the Kharkiv Oblast being liberated, but Ukraine did not stop there because they did not want to give the Russians a chance to just defend. So they pushed forward as far as they could. In fact, at the time of this recording, they've probably even pushed further. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot about this strategic town sooner or later, Starobilsk. And Russia is leaving a lot of stuff behind. Take Svartov, for example. Russia left behind 4 KAMAZ trucks and 20 Tiger infantry mobility vehicles, just like the one I mentioned there before. Very highly well regarded. And were said to have left for settlements in the direction of the Russian-occupied Luhansk Oblast. Surprise, surprise. But long story short, the Russian troops settled in this area or in some of these villages. They saw the oncoming Ukrainians and used a single vehicle to effectively escape. It appears they had more military hardware, vehicles of the sort, than they actually had people stationed in all of these little villages here. That's why a lot of this stuff is being left behind. That, and they need to make a quick getaway, and they can't do that in a tank. They can do that in a small light vehicle, maybe a small truck. Now, like I said, the Ukrainian forces are really focusing on the Donbass. Now, the Donbass comprises of 2 oblasts, so the Luhansk Oblast here and the Donetsk Oblast here as well. And we can see the front lines where there's been several hundred pushes from the Russian side right at this sort of almost vertical front line in the last so many months now. And Russia just has not been able to push forward. Ukraine continues to repel these advances. Ukraine particularly has their sights set on this little town, or what I like to call the outer suburb of the Donetsk city, if you've been watching any of my older videos. So Russia recently took this, maybe about 2 weeks ago. They were trying to take it for 6 months. I'm very interested to see what happens now, but it is said that the Ukrainian forces certainly have this in their sights, and obviously the rest of the Donbass too. Now we'll move across to the greater Ukraine map here, where the Ukraine military says it downed 9 out of 11 missiles launched in the last 24-hour reporting period, mostly in the central and south regions, including the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast here, Zaporizhia, and Kherson, or the Kherson Oblast too. And speaking of Kherson, the other counteroffensive, so Russian units around the Kherson offensive front line are experiencing severe logistical issues. Russian forces are trying to sustain these losses by transporting logistical, so basically ammo, health kits, all sorts of things via helicopters and boats. But this is a terribly inefficient means to do this. They need to do this because, again, the HIMARS systems that Ukraine uses, the missile systems, have taken out the bridges, the pontoons, the railways, everything that can get basically supplies to the north bank of the Dnipro River here. And it's been reported that Russian helicopter pilots don't want to make this flight. They don't want to go from south to north, dropping off supplies all near the front line, because they're worried about things such as Stinger missiles, surface-to-air missiles, you name it, Ukraine's got it to take out these helicopters, and they've certainly taken out their fair share of helicopters now. Now, what's generally happening in Kherson is, since they heard about the counteroffensive in Kherson, so the Russian forces heard about this well over a month ago now. It was in July time that I was talking about it. They stationed 25 to 30,000 additional troops here. Then, as I mentioned earlier in the video, Ukraine forces cut out their supply lines, their logistical lines, their ability to move back and forth, and we've effectively got a lot of Russian soldiers cornered on this north bank there. As a result, where they could, there have been some really recent reports of Russian army withdrawing from some positions around here. Also, to top that off, Russian forces on the Kherson frontline are reportedly trying to negotiate the surrender of themselves and their weapons, according to the Ukrainian Operational Command South. So we'll see how this area escalates in the upcoming days for sure. Now, I promised I'd mention to you something about an aeroplane before. So this little guy here, which I suspect is the same one they're talking about. So in the Crimean Peninsula, Russian air defenses mistakenly shot down one of their own Su-34s over Crimea earlier today. Now, we don't have the footage yet. We've got the reports. Sometimes the footage or the pictures come a day later, but I can't wait to see that. This isn't the first time Russia in the entirety of the war has gotten trigger happy. It's been happening a lot. Say, for instance, in the Donbass region, there's been shelling from troops, Russian troops, say, on the south, getting the north a bit more, and Russian troops on the north hitting the south, and they're hitting each other. These are confirmed things that have been happening quite a bit. So Russian intelligence, Russian communication, it's not the best. Now to a bit of news, a bit of a fun one to start it off with. So all TV channels were hacked in Crimea. Back to Crimea there. And this isn't the first time as well. And there's footage of President Zelensky of Ukraine addressing the Crimeans being played on all channels. So the citizenry of the Crimean Peninsula, for a change, has a chance to get a little bit of a relief from Russian propaganda. And truly, in many ways, this isn't just a physical hardware or physical military hardware war, it's also an information war. Also, in other news, the French President Macron has very recently discussed the nuclear power plant situation in Zaporizhia with Putin and asked him to withdraw his weapons to ensure the site's safety by following the IAEA's recommendation. So that's the International Atomic Energy Agency's recommendation. Of course, Putin isn't ready yet to do this. Probably one of the very few cards he's holding at the moment, using it as sort of a tool of blackmail to hold the power plant there. Also, in other interesting news, Russia postpones plans to stage referendums in occupied territories amid Ukraine's counteroffensive. So the Kremlin abandoned plans to conduct staged referendums in Kharkiv and the Zaporizhia oblasts. Now, these staged referendums, they just don't have enough territory to do it. So Zaporizhia, yeah, they've got 2/3 of the territory. Kharkiv Oblast, they've got none of the territory really now, so that would be silly to do a staged referendum there. And they still have plans to hold a so-called referendum in Kherson as well. But the counteroffensive is quite strong there, so that's unlikely to happen for some time, probably at this point now. And in more news, this is actually more of a tidbit, but in the last week, Ukraine has recaptured more territory than the Russian forces have captured in all of their operations since April. So Russian forces since April to September now captured less territory than what the Ukrainian forces have recaptured in the last week. Just astonishing. And just a bit of a funny to round off the day with, guys. So a well-timed funny for today, given all the loot that Ukrainian is being given or donated from Russia, as I like to say. So we've got this guy doing a video from the Ukrainian 36th Rifle Brigade, which becomes now maybe the tank brigade, because the Ukrainian speaking over the video is just saying things like, "Ooh, everyone gets a tank now, this is great, lots of ammo, ooh, that's an infantry fighting vehicle over there." So very, very joyous, fun video. This one's taken in Kharkiv, obviously there as well, with all the recent loots, as opposed to looting. Better be careful with my wording there. So good stuff indeed. So thanks for watching, guys. Please leave a comment, subscribe, hit that like button. I wonder if we'll see as many trolls. I haven't noticed as many trolls in the comments recently because of these massive counter-offensives. They just have to regroup and redecide what they're going to say in future comments. So probably see less of them with this video as we have in the last 2 or 3 videos. But try not to engage with them too much. They're just a bit silly. So thanks again, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.